Mouthwashing is a game that in actuality has very little to do with mouthwash, or the act of mouthwashing for that matter. Like, seriously, the mouthwash doesn't even show up until nearly 40 minutes into the game. This should have been called mouth talking with how much bloody dialogue there is in this game. Like, it's just these bozos standing around rambling and sending you on fetch quests. Like, what the... In Mouthwashing, you primarily play as Jimmy, the co-pilot of a cargo freight ship known as the Tulpar, delivering an abundance of mouthwash on a trip that the game claims was supposed to last 382 days for a company called Pony Express. The game starts with you as a seemingly unknown individual disengaging the ship's autopilot and setting the ship's course to crash into a passing rock. This occurs on the 147th day of the cargo trip. The room turns red, flashing warning sounds start blaring as you leave the cockpit and head out towards the main part of the ship, where you run into a statue of the company's mascot, Polly. As you try to walk past the statue, Polly then shows up right in front of you, and every direction you turn to try and get away, Polly is standing there. Sparks start flashing and smoke fills the hallways until the entire screen goes white. The game then takes turns jumping between the past and the present, before and after the crash. But the game's main plot follows the aftermath of the crash. As the game progresses, the situation the characters find themselves stuck in is getting increasingly worse. With Curly, the ship's main captain, out of commission and stuck as a mummy on the hospital bed, you, as the co-pilot Jimmy, must walk back and forth around the ship, attempting to fix the situation, as you are now having to take the role of the ship's captain. We are quickly introduced to the other three characters. Swansea, the grumpy, middle-aged technician/engineer of the ship. Anya, the ship's nurse, who is later revealed to have either not passed medical school or cheated her way through it in order to get the medical nurse position. This is not exactly made clear, but it's heavily implied. And Daisuke, the kid that was thrown on board by the company as an intern that works for Swansea, and seems to get a decent amount of flack from Swansea as well. The game jumps back and forth in time, showing how the crew over the course of months, both before and after the crash, gradually find their situation getting continuously worse. Jimmy is shown to not be very good at managing a crew of just himself, 3 people,
and an immobilized Captain Curly,
being fed painkillers, so he stops groaning and moaning in pain. Throughout the game, there are also multiple scenes where we appear to play as Jimmy having some sort of hallucination. These hallucinations feature falling into a giant sea of what appears to be blood, a giant conglomerate that looks like a horse with the disfigured body shape of a giraffe if a giraffe stood on 2 legs. Swansea chasing him around with an axe in a graveyard. We will touch on this later. And a few others that more involve a conversation between Curly and Jimmy and less hallucinations, more flashbacks than anything. Oh, and literally feeding Curly his own leg that he pukes out if you don't turn his literal digestion system into the proper position so it reaches his stomach using red valves. Throughout the game, Jimmy is shown to be someone who struggles to take any form of responsibility for his actions or lack thereof. He's shown to be extremely bad at not only handling stress, but also at taking any level of blame or responsibility. He constantly lashes out, yells at other crew members for the actions they take, even outright complains to Swansea after Swansea puts Daisuke out of his misery. This scene, Swansea putting Daisuke out of his misery, is most likely what led to the scene that occurs about an hour or so into the game, where you're Jimmy locked in the cockpit with Swansea banging on the door, demanding that Jimmy come out. And as Jimmy manages to get some nylon rope in that scene, Swansea breaks the door window to reach in and unlock the door himself. Like Jack Torrance from The Shining, except he's nowhere near as memorable. It is later revealed that Jimmy is actually the one that is responsible for causing the ship to crash. The scene is shown like it was supposed to be this big reveal, but it was pretty obvious from the get-go. And Curly got injured because he ran in to try and stop the crash from occurring, which in all honesty just does little more than just visually show what was made pretty obvious by just playing the game. Especially how Jimmy keeps emphasizing that it was Curly that got them into this mess. But the story ends with Jimmy seemingly regretting his actions and seemingly trying to make things right by allowing Curly to be the one to be put into the only functioning cryopod left before walking off screen and the game rolls credits. Before we really dive into Jimmy and the things he experiences throughout the game and the actions he takes, I need to first dispel any possible misconceptions that I believe some people may have taken away from this game, mainly because of how poorly the game does things at times. Jimmy is not psychopathic. He is not a sociopath either. Psychopaths tend to be pretty head on shoulders. They may be manipulative, evil, and even take lives, but psychopaths typically have a sound mind and are able to blend into their surrounding society. While Jimmy does display certain somewhat identifiable traits of a psychopath, his actions are not done out of being a remorseless killer, nor is it done as a spur-of-the-moment thing. There's also no hard evidence or hints anywhere in the game that even attempt to paint Jimmy as having any underlying mental illnesses that would cause him to do the things that he does. While he does not show any remorse for the death of Daisuke, I do not believe this is because he is incapable of feeling remorse, but rather that at this point in the game, his constant inaction and lack of taking accountability has led him into this delusion that this is all happening because the other crewmates are not giving him time to think, as he puts it. So I just want to make that abundantly clear as we move forward so we are all on the same page. Even from the very beginning of the game, we are constantly shown the existence of Pony Express's signature mascot, their horse Polly, in the form of a statue seemingly always being around the ship as Jimmy runs around trying to fix the situation. In the lounge of the ship, there are posters hung up of the mascot showing what the company expects from their employees, which honestly just paints Pony Express as the cliched, terrible company that really doesn't care about its employees. But hey, they're never shown to be as bad as Blizzard. I've seen different interpretations from players of what the horse Polly is supposed to represent. Some seem to think that it represents Anya's pregnancy, especially considering the scene where you do an ultrasound. I've seen others say that the horse Polly is an allegory for Jimmy trying to run away from and ignore his responsibilities and the results of his actions/inactions. However, I believe that it is supposed to represent all of these. Due to the ultrasound scene, it is very clear that to some extent, the mascot constantly being seen is supposed to represent Jimmy's assaulting of Anna and how he's refusing to take care of her or take accountability for her or her pregnancy, that he is running away from the responsibilities. However, there's a scene that makes me believe that it is not the only thing that it is supposed to represent. After the scene of running away from the poly conglomerate in the vents, you wind up in a dark hallway with walls that quickly become covered in an endless number of ID cards belonging to the different members of the crew. Not just Anna, but Swansea, Curly, Daisuke, and Jimmy himself as well. This hallway leads to a stairwell you have to walk up, with tons of empty mouthwashing bottles tumbling down the steps as you go that continue to increase the higher you get.
This leads to you walking up to a massive pile of empty mouthwash bottles, where the lights slowly turn on to reveal the Polly mascot standing at the top. And what the mascot says, I think, is very telling. Keep in mind, all of this is not actually happening. It's all in Jimmy's head. Jimmy actually responds, once again basically failing to take any form of responsibility for what he has done. Then he directly states he will take responsibility by taking care of Captain Curly. After being asked if he really means it, he tries to affirm his statement, admitting that he screwed up, and goes on to try and repeat the central message of the story. But it is interrupted by the mascot asking him the question, if what he says is true, why is he so concerned with Curly? This game does not exactly have the most tightly written story. There is a lot of jumping back and forth and can sometimes seem incoherent and all over the place. But I believe the central message that the story is trying to tell is that our worst moments should not define who we are as a person. That even if we are a person who has done some bad things and made some big mistakes, that does not innately make us bad people. That we should be able to rectify those mistakes and still be able to try and do something good. Humans are innately selfish creatures and are prone to doing bad things simply for their own self-interest. But it is also our ability to feel compassion and ability to have a desire to help others that sort of equalizes that selfishness in a way, makes us compassionate as well. Does the game effectively convey its message throughout the story? Yes and no. I believe the character you play as, Jimmy, and his mental hallucination scenes do a far better job representing what I believe the message of the game is. Far, far better than the actual game and its imagery does. I also think the different interpretations of certain scenes that people have taken away from it, while their ideas and theories are not in any way invalid and could even be correct for all we know, they are caused by the rest of the story being handled fairly poorly. And so the important scenes that are supposed to be the main conveyor of the game's message gets interpreted in multiple different ways. Now, perhaps you disagree with me. Perhaps you think I'm looking too deep into things, and that's okay. But despite this game being subpar, the concept and ideas it attempts to explore still fascinated me and made me want to talk about it. But if you believe that I missed something or think that I misinterpreted things, please tell me what you think in the comments below alongside other characters or stories as a whole you would like me to cover in the future. And while you are down there, you should like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Also make sure to hit that noti bell so you never miss an upload. Till next time.